today. So our presenter, Steve Anderson, is a professor. Sorry, I'm learning English words, right? English is not my first language. Emeritus, is that a correct word? To say?
In 10 days.
In 10 days. Can I just say the professor then? And Ontario used to do the Start of Education at the University of Toronto. Welcome,
Thank you.
Steve. We have Nusrat Fatimarizvi, who's a professor at the Aga Khan University Institute for Education and Development in Pakistan. We have Dr. Anjlee Prakash, is the founder and chairperson of the Learning Link Foundation. And Michelle Holmes is the manager of the Partnership for Strengthening Innovation and Practice in Secondary Education, which we all know SIPSE is an easier way.
Think of a coffee shop on a cruise ship. It's fancy.
It's a collaboration among a number of donors that are supporting secondary education. So welcome everyone, and we'll start with Professor Steve to start the conversation, and then we'll go from there.
Great, just a couple of introductory comments. In preparation for my retirement, when I taught my last graduate course last fall, a one-time thing, a seminar. What I did was I picked 12 things that I'm proud of that I've written over my 30-year career about school improvement and teacher development. And so that was the text for the course. And in each class, I had 2 students interview me about that topic, which went beyond reading to, what I think they know about that. And to my surprise, that usually took about an hour and 45 minutes. In preparing 10 minutes a day, I'm not going to try to tell you everything I think or know about, the topic that's at hand, but certainly in the discussion, hopefully I can have more to say. And second is that I recently completed a study in Mombasa for teacher and head teacher professional learning network work supported by the Khan Academy Professional Development Center. And one of the positive findings from that investigation of what these networks were doing was that they were reinforcing what they had learned in their initial teacher development or head teacher development courses. And I'm saying that because I think a lot of what I have to say is really reinforcing what you've already heard and learned today, rather than necessarily introducing something entirely new. But it's good to have reinforcement too. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to interview what we call superintendents of education or directors of education at the school district level in a variety of several school districts in my province of Ontario, 16 of them. And one of the questions that I asked them was, at their local level, the district level, what did they see as the primary goals of education? And they came up with basically 6 of those. One was academic success, usually talked about in terms of measurable academic success because of the accountability system. They said preparation for post-secondary education, personalized preparation for post-secondary education, whatever that might be. They used the term well-rounded education, which was code word for including the arts, not just academic stuff. They talked about personal development and well-being of students, which at the time wasn't on the official agenda. Now, well-being is an official goal in the province of Ontario, and it has been for the past 4 or 5 years. They talked about social identity and citizenship development, learning to become members of society, etc., and valuing their own social identities in the ethnically plural context that I live in Ontario. They talked about values-based education, or if you were from the publicly funded Catholic system that we have, it was framed in terms of faith-based education, but more generally, values-based education. And then the global thing, developing the whole child. Well, that's an impressive list, and it sounds a lot like, the kinds of things that were talked about today, or are in David's paper here about the expectations for teaching. But I think there's a challenge there. And the first challenge is the lack of pedagogical knowledge and expertise and how to accomplish many of these non-academic goals in education, much less how to assess learning and development in those areas. I think there's a second challenge in the unreasonable expectations for what teachers can do on their own, okay? And for what teacher education programs can prepare teachers to do, especially in that non-academic goal sphere. So what do I see as a need here? I think it's easy to critique, but you need to think about possible ways out of the problem as well. We need school and school system partnerships with other agencies for the purposes of achieving these broader goals and expectations. Perhaps teachers acting as lead teachers in working with those people who are not necessarily educators, and then you can just tell the kids, and that's going to make a difference. But teachers have a clear role to play in framing and presenting and working with folks in doing that. Second is a need that was certainly highlighted in comments from both the global teacher presenter and from the Pennsylvania State teacher presenter. We're reinforcing there, and that is the school system have to provide time for teachers to collaborate with others. If we're going to talk about having partnerships with people outside the school, not just within the school, we have to provide the time for that to happen within the context of a teacher's regular work day. Third, since we don't know what to do in those areas anyway, in many cases, well-being in Ontario, it's kids' mental health and everything like that. Well, I taught in teacher education for 25 years. We didn't prepare teachers for that. Furthermore, I come from a family of both parents were practicing psychologists. My brother and his wife are practicing psychologists, and I have one cousin that is. They didn't learn how to be, to work with people with psychological difficulties in the course of an 8-month teacher education program. Has 1, 2, 3, 4 sessions on that. Expectations are beyond teachers. So we need to take an approach that is about discovering what works, not about we know what works in any of these areas which we are nobly expecting teachers to embark on and work with, and specific to their own teaching and learning context. And third, the final on the fourth need there is to focus accountability on learning to become better, not on absolute results. And teachers perhaps can be held uniquely accountable for the education goals, but not less uniquely accountable for those goals that require collaboration with others. It would be unreasonable to do so. So that had to do with uncertainty of the goals of education and teaching. The second theme that I wanted to address was uncertainty and diversity in student characteristics in teaching. And I'm going to say, I was looking for the word traditional, common, whatever. Common expectation that effective teachers are skilled at dealing with student diversity. This has been around with us forever in the discourse on what we expect teachers to be able to do. Number one, they change class groups every year. Whether it's a full class in an elementary situation or whether it's 6 classes in a day of secondary school, they're constantly faced with a different set of students, and we expect them to be able to deal with that diversity there. There's the diversity in student characteristics, their prior knowledge and experience, their social characteristics and personal characteristics. We expect teachers to be able to respond to that diversity. And diversity in student performance. All kids don't progress at the same rate. So we expect teachers to be able to recognize that, assess that, adapt what they're doing to account for that. You go back, I started working in education in the mid-1970s. It was all individualized education at that time. That's the same idea. We expected teachers, Benjamin Bloom or whatever, and mastery learning and individualized education. We went into the 80s and 90s and we were talking all about learning styles and about multiple intelligences and expecting teachers to be able to, number one, recognize different learning styles in kids, or recognizing different intelligences and to adapt what they're doing and again assess the outcomes. These days, where it's not just these days, when it's been around for a while, the big arguments about making learning more student-centered, particularly in developing world countries, we hear that a lot. And differentiated instruction, the big mantra in at least North American schools and spilling over into everybody's differentiating instruction. And why that's different from individualizing instruction 40 years ago, I'm not sure. But it's there, except that we have data now that we didn't have then, presumably. There's a challenge here. One of the challenges is that student diversity is actually increasing, and that's a reality around the world. I do a lot of work in Chile. In the last 2 years, all of a sudden in Santiago, they're getting a flood of immigrants from Haiti. Nobody knows why it's happening. Some door opened and it's there, and they're French Creole speaking and landing in Santiago, and the school system doesn't know what to do with them. Increasing diversity worldwide because of immigration patterns is a reality. Notwithstanding that, there's a persistent criticism, and I'm going to say in my observations in classrooms, it's a valid criticism, of teaching as standardized and repetitive in most instances, not counting the classrooms that we're hearing about from our award-winning teachers, but that is the reality in many classrooms. And I think a related challenge is that because you have to ask why. Why is that the case? Because there are common constraints that inhibit adaptation and flexibility and promote standardization. Official textbooks. If I walk into a poverty area in African schools, or perhaps in South Asian schools in Pakistan or something like that, the textbook is the curriculum. And memorizing the textbook is the curriculum. And far be it from the teacher to depart from that because she or he doesn't know anything more than what's there, so he can't invite questions that go beyond that. I watched a girl in a secondary school in Pakistan. The teacher was trying to be innovative. We all read the same story. Create a new title for the story. Raise your hands and tell me why you created the new title. Nafisa raised her hand. She gave this new title for the story. And another girl jumps in and says, "You can't say that, it's not in the text." You could only choose another title that was still in the text. Major challenges to official textbooks, standardized curriculum, right? I mean, teachers are looking for ways to regularize what they do because the diversity is so, they need something to give structure there. Standardized curriculum, prescribed, is certainly something to sink your teeth into. How about a lesson plan once developed and implemented? I've got a whole bunch of them in my courses that I've developed and taught that I'm proud of, talking about teaching students how to respond to the kinds of questions that were going to be on the standardized test. What are the need here? I think in the need, in terms of trying to deal with the diversity, is really, and it's popular things to say, whether you're looking at Holmes' work, or John Hattie's work, etc., is formative evaluation. And we need formative evaluation instruments, but also skills for the teachers to be able to assess student learning in progress, individually and in groups, but we also need time for teachers to process that data and to think about, and so, what will we do, given now that is what we know, to use it for curriculum and lesson planning. Second, I think that we need recognition that teacher learning about the diversity in student learning and how to deal with it and student learning and development can't be accomplished on a large scale by individual teachers alone. So we need teachers as collaborative professionals and system support, come back to that one, for teacher collaboration. Time, resources, opportunities for teacher decision making in a meaningful way. In terms of classroom teaching and learning, not just about who's going to supervise recess or the lunchroom, etc. My colleagues, Andy Hargrave and Mike Fullen, talk about professional capital, meaning the material capital, the resources available, the social capital, the access to other colleagues, etc., and thinking, working together, and the professional capital aligned to the kinds of decisions that teachers are being empowered and supported in making on behalf of the teaching and learning that they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve, so much for raising some of the challenges that teachers in today's classrooms are in the classroom are facing, but also some of your thoughts around what we really need to do and prioritize. And we'll hear from Nusrat on some of their experience and how they're preparing teachers in Pakistan. So,
thank you, Nafisa. You see, in our context, like India and Pakistan, we have very strong heritage of Urdu poetry. And when yesterday I was first time introduced to Anjlee, she talked about the Urdu poetry. So I recall a verse. It's Mir Sahab zamana nazuk hai, dono haathon se thamiye dastar. It means time is changing. Hold your turban tightly. Turban is the symbol of values, beliefs. So that poet is saying that things are changing, and what are the things at risk? It our values, our beliefs. So the thing is that so when we talk about this changing time, and new times definitely compels people to learn new things, but at the same time it is necessary to unlearn several things, and unlearning is psychological and emotionally challenging. So first of all, we have to see that this uncertainty, we sometimes we feel that this is the anomaly. This is not the anomaly, this is the reality. So if this is the reality, we should accept it and prepare for it. In this, I'm talking about the context of Pakistan, where with the context of the overall educational situation is not promising, especially public schools, rural context, and even in poor urban setting, the education is not promising, and except few islands of success and hope, overall the situation is not good. In all the indicators like EFA and SDG targets, we are far behind, and for that we need to have to overcome this situation. We need to have teachers or teacher educator who are critical, creative, reflective, and constructive, and those who can environmentally caring and equity oriented and ethically conscious people we want as teacher and teacher educator. So I'm talking about Aga Khan University Institute of Educational Development's experiences of offering master's program. And here Bernadette Dean is there. She knows better than I do about our program because she was from the very beginning with us. And Rasan is there, he knows very well about programs. But you see, my experience of being coordinator of these programs for several years, so I will talk about this. This AKUID, we say Aga Khan University Institute for Educational Development is AKUID, it works on the principle of IQRA. IQRA, I-Q-R-A. IQRA is the first word of Quran, but this IQRA means impact, quality, relevance, and access. So these four principles on which we try to follow these four principles in all the programs and activities. So this we have two master's program at the moment, MA and MPhil, and in this program we have. This program is actually for the teachers, teacher educators, and senior educational administrators, and the leader and the people from the curriculum development and in different domain of education. They come to our program. I want to tell about the three foci. First of all, we focus on learning to learn. And learning to learn is actually, it includes learning to question, learning to unlearn, learning to relearn. So in all the courses, we have a component of reconceptualization. Like for example, I teach mathematics courses, reconsider. What do you understand by mathematics? What is the new ways of, and their assumption, their beliefs, their practices of teaching mathematics in the same way in other courses. So this reflective practice is inbuilt in our programs. Then the second thing is learning to live together. Learning to live together in cross-cultural, gender and ethnic group. We take students from different part of the country, and they come here. There are some people who have not been to formal education for a long time. Because we take students from schools, and in Pakistan, in fact, anybody can teach. Anybody can teach. To some people, they have not done any initial teacher education, and they come to our program. So they come to our program, and then we have some teachers from the urban setting, some private schools, some elite schools. So there's a big diversity among the rural teachers, among the urban teachers, and then they come here in this group, and they learn to live to learn together as a group. And then the learning to explore possibilities. So these are the things. So we have courses. You can see although this is, I'm just telling the name of the courses, but you can see the title that reflects how learning to learn in 21st century. We have a course. We have gender studies in education. We have health promotion in school. We have environmental education, educational change. So these type of courses we offer, and the course is citizenship education and community development. These courses are there. Then we have pedagogies. We have our pedagogies. We are going. A book is coming very soon about signature pedagogies, and in which the faculty members, all the faculty members, written a chapter on the key pedagogies they use in their classroom. For example, inquiry in science classroom, promoting argumentation in science classroom, and then reflective practice as pedagogy in mathematics education course. You can see that blended learning in early childhood education. In the same way, creative narrative as a way of teacher learning, appreciative pedagogies to develop school leaders, documentaries and policy dialogue in a course which is policy studies in education, role played with educational change. So these are some pedagogies, and the book very soon will be coming, and in which we have written about our key pedagogies. Then our students research, and now because we have two programs, M.Ed and MPhil, so our students research topics are very diversified. The teacher, those who are coming from a school background, they do action research, they do research in the classroom practices, but some fellow students, they are not from the school, but they are in teacher education institute, they are coming from the Bureau of Curriculum, so they take bigger question for their research. So these researches are contextualized and on different topic. And recently we have developed a monogram, and in which we have in which the students' research we published this, and it came last month, and this is very good piece of work because here in which we selected key studies which student conducted, and on which they have written a chapter, different chapters. So these are our successes in this, that we can say definitely we created a model of teacher education in Pakistan, and this model is replicated in different institutes. Now our graduates, they are running their own institute, or they are at key position in different institute across the country. And the challenges which we face, and it is the first of all, is access and quality. It is very difficult to match both the things, because you see, we take teachers from school, and I've told you that our primary and secondary education is not very good. And when the primary and secondary education is not good, the teacher in school, their academic skills are not very strong. And when they come to program, they learn how to be a graduate student in a university, which we say that it is the standard of international university. So it's a big challenge for them to prepare for them. And then it's difficult to get right people who are competent and have a right qualification also. Now we have Higher Education Commission in Pakistan. They have put conditions who can take master's degree in education. So they want to have the student should have 4-year B.Ed before coming to M.Ed program. So now in schools we don't find teachers, those who have B.Ed degrees, and if they don't have B.Ed degree, how can they come to our program? And if they have B.Ed degree, unfortunately they are not very competent. They are not. So the thing is that the quality of teacher education, the initial teacher education, at the moment it's not good. So the teachers who have initial teacher education, they are not necessarily very good teachers, or they have potential to be good graduate students. So this is the thing that this is challenging. Then again, I said that they come here, they learn to live together, but again we are creating an island of peace in the land of hostility, conflict, intolerance. So you see that this is because we cannot change the outside environment. They are coming here, they are learning to be someone, but it is difficult to apply for them to apply this in their own context if the school context, or if they are where they work, it is not very supportive for them. So for them it is difficult to apply learning if the environment is not supportive for them. Then again, another thing which is we are having ethical and professional benchmark, but in the context where the Pakistan and I could say other developing countries where might is right, and at this situation when we say that to be ethical, to be professional, so it sometimes we are moving against the current. So this is the thing, this is the challenge which we face, and I think
Thank you so much for sharing the experiences that I think the university is having and challenging, where you're trying to bring teachers from the schools and go through your master program and at the level they're in, and you're still trying to provide them with a quality program so that they can receive that certificate and the degree from university, and some of both the successes and challenges. Thank you. I think we'll go to Anjlee, if you could turn on the presentation. Yes. So you can start while we're
Yes. So good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure and privilege for me to be here at Oxford, and the interactions I've had and heard the sessions has truly been enlightening. So it's great to meet everyone here. I'm from Learning Links Foundation. We work in India and in countries in the region. We are a 15-year-old organization trying to catalyze change in education. Coming to our topic today of transforming teachers, you may have heard, you can go to the next slide, the term guru. It's in Indian tradition, a guru, a teacher, you may take it as synonymous, has always been there not only to teach but to guide, to take someone from darkness to light. And I think in today's context, the wider meaning of the word teacher is something that we are focusing on in the programs that we do in India, and trying to go back to get all the qualities of a guru back into our teachers today. A guru was also one who led you to spiritual evolution. And I think these are few things we are, as I said, trying to bring back into our system. If you go to the next slide. Our former president recently said that the soul of India resides in pluralism and tolerance, and this society has come through assimilation of ideas over many centuries. If you look at India, it is 1.3 billion people. We have 122 languages. We have 7 major religions. We have origin from 3 ethnic groups. So this is something we live with all the time. And in any given classroom in India, you'll find a mixture of all what I've just shared. Yet it is one country, one nation, one flag. If you look at this image, it always amazes me. It's not uncommon to see children loaded in rickshaws, carts, going to school. And with, I think, 1.3 billion people, 2.6 million students, that's the way a lot of them get to school every morning. The government today in India, pardon?
I just wanted, that figure doesn't seem right, from 1.3 billion to 2.6 million students. So you must be having...
That was the primary
Okay.
level.
Okay.
Yeah, 1.3 billion. Yeah. We have about 28.5% of our population, 28.5 between the ages of 0 and 14. So it's the youngest nation after China, and we will soon beat China because with their one-child policy, India has a younger population today, as we see in the next few years. If you go to the next slide, if you see the school systems in India, there is an entire variety there. 1.5 million schools, 60% of them government, and private schools, which were earlier very few, are now growing in number, and government schools, the public school system is decreasing year on year. There is a lot of aspiration for students to go to English medium schools, get in touch with all the modern technology, and so anyone who can afford it would pull their child out of a government school and put in a private school setup. If you see the schools, you can see the range. The top, the one on the left-hand corner to the one at the last. International baccalaureate is there. The state board schools are there. Then the government schools are there. And if you look at this, the children, they also come from varied backgrounds. Child labor, child marriage, all sorts of abuse is there. The children in the classroom are going through different experiences. Even in the elite schools, we are sort of aping the world in many ways. There is a lot of loneliness in children in the cities today, depression, drugs, what children everywhere else in the world deal with. So it is in this scenario that, just go to the next slide, the role of the teacher, the guru, we feel is the only constant, stable, reliable factor that many children in rural India have. A teacher is a respected figure. So I really admire teachers because Indian classrooms seem to be believed as many as 70 children in a classroom, and we expect magic from the teacher. And they really work hard. They are with these kids out in the heat, all through the year, working with them. So I think all the help that we can give our teachers should be given to them in multiple ways. And at Learning Links, that is what we do as part of one of our verticals, is extensive professional development for teachers. I won't go through the rest of my slides, just skip one and go to the next, and then I'll just speak after that in interest of time. Yeah. So we work across these verticals. Since we work at the grassroots level, a lot of what we implement, we have opportunity today to advise, consult and speak in policy forums in the country. We have a vertical for education solutions, skill building, and we use technology as a tool to support all the work that we do. Coming to our professional development, the ask from the government or from the country or from the boards of education is today largely focused on learning levels of children. Let them at least learn grade level. All the other things are not their main focus. So a lot of our professional development initiatives are empowering teachers to do just that. However, we have seen that the true difference which these teachers can really make is to help children value themselves as individuals. And it is this new module that we have put across all our professional development. And when I look at the title of the symposium that we have, I think that is one thing that can play an important role going forward. If children are, confident in themselves, have a good self-esteem, value their own existence, are grounded in their own being, then any uncertainty outside they can handle. And we've seen this time and again. We've had projects, large projects with our donors where they say, we have to increase the children's learning. It's not happening. So we say, stop everything. Just love the kids. Just relate to the kids, then start your programs. And we've seen each time that works. Once a child believes in him or herself, all that we want to do with them works pretty well. I have a lot of slides with the kind of programs we do. We have graded our professional development. A lot of our teachers don't even know the subject. They're a maths teacher. They don't know their own grade level math. So we start with the basics there. We move them on to learning, like what the professor said, formative assessments are critical. You have to know where your children are to inform your own instruction and help them move forward. So we've adopted data-driven approaches where we train our teachers to use assessment data to inform what they will do in the next class. This is the slide actually I'm on. Mentoring goes a long way. We've seen all the training that we do in classrooms is very often forgotten when they go back to school. So forum to field. If you have people who will work with them in their school, that's more valuable than just having training in a training room setting. And I think then it is when they reach that level where they are open to accept mentorship, peer grooming of each other, peer mentoring, that is when the true transformation comes, where they take ownership of being a teacher, of taking that responsibility and being accountable for the future of their children and their learning. So I'll, am I out of time? I have time? Okay. So this is the engagement model that we have been following. And as I said, across all of this, giving children a self of purpose and a confidence in themselves has proved to be the biggest thing that a teacher can do with their children. I won't use the slides. The other thing that we've worked very effectively with teachers is what the government likes to call a teacher skill audit. It's a 5-pronged process with about 8 indicators in each, which teachers use for themselves. Yes, that's the one. So they use it in a reflective mode. We use the assessment with their peers, with their superiors, and with classroom observation. And we've seen that this sort of a report card of a teacher is being used very constructively to help teachers improve in their practice. The worry here was that they would use it as a punitive tool or link it to increments, etc., etc. We've tried to stay away from that. But having a framework for teachers to grow and learn has proved useful. And definitely if we want our teachers to nurture so much in the children, we need to give them the right tools to assess and measure development in all those areas. We say children should be creative. Now, how is a teacher going to measure creativity? We are part of a research with OECD where we are giving teachers tools to measure progression of creativity. Then it makes sense. You're telling the teacher, let's have children be creative. They will do some projects, they'll do something, they'll make their own interpretation of it. But if we really want to see the change happen, we need to support them. And just to conclude, I think teaching is the most noble profession. The kind of children we can impact, the futures we can change, and all the respect and admiration that we have for teachers has to be supported with, whether it's training, it's money, it's stature, it's respect, just all of that. And that's what we try to weave into all the policy work that we do back home. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your inspiring work. And
Great. Well, I'll start with a caveat here that I'm calling a little bit of an audible on myself, because I think today has been just really a lot to digest, and there's a lot that I've been thinking about, and we've heard in the various talks, so it's really shifted kind of what I thought might be worth having a conversation about here. So bear with me if I'm hunting for little things. But I think that over the course of the day, we've talked a lot about what the role of education is in an uncertain world, and the role of teachers in this uncertainty, from political uncertainty to the future of the labor market, what that might look like, where to migration, to kids not knowing where their next meal will come from, and frankly the demand that this places on the teacher as an individual is pretty incredible. And how in this moment where what was described this morning, I think it's the second renaissance, how are we kind of living in this, and what does the next teacher look like? There's been no shortage of really big, lofty questions put on the table today. How do you foster creativity and imagination among teachers? How do we create environments where rather than managing teachers, we're giving them space and autonomy to iterate? How do we shift our collective understanding of the role of teachers, that they're not transmitting knowledge but facilitating learning? As Diane said in the last session, how do we ask teachers to deliver something that they never themselves experienced? And I think what Anjlee just really spoke to well is how do we turn teachers now back into gurus, and what's the support and ecosystem that it takes to do that. So in digesting kind of all of those lofty questions and challenges, and then looking back at what the topic for this session was, and that was teacher transformation. And I had this sort of feeling of what Dr. Christopher had described this morning as uncertainty paralysis, where I thought, God, there is no answer, but yeah, that box, that was a great box. And I just felt that, that paralysis in the nexus, and kind of wanted to check myself and remind myself that even with all of these questions and this feeling that what needs to happen is so overwhelming, that radical transformation does happen, and we have seen it. And I'm thinking about outside of education. When I grew up, 5 years ago, could you imagine our parents told us, don't get in cars with strangers, don't talk to strangers. Certainly you wouldn't sleep in a stranger's bed. They wrote fairy tales about it. Today we not only talk to, but we date strangers on dating apps. We get in cars with strangers all the time. Can you imagine 5 years ago if an Uber drove by and you're like, why are those two men, why is one man in the back seat of that other man's Toyota Corolla? It would be weird. And I'm sleeping in a stranger's bed. I'm in an Airbnb. And that's a radical transformation of trust, and how we understand trust, and how we navigate and handle our relationships with strangers. And I think that there's something important in that for us, because I think that for teachers, and in this teacher conversation about radical uncertainty, what we're asking we need to be doing is changing our relationship to trust with the teacher. And we've heard that time and time again over the last few days, that we've heard, and I think it was so well put by Andrea this morning, that she sees her role as a teacher as being fundamentally about relationships and building trust with students. And how do we translate how we cultivate that capacity to do that? It seems like a really big challenge. It's not just how do you deliver better skills to teachers, but it's a possible challenge. If I can sleep in a stranger's bed, we can figure out how to, or get in the back of a car with a 19-year-old in a Bob Marley t-shirt, and I trust him, we can trust our teachers. And so I think that as we think about what are the innovations, how now do we create those ecosystems to support teachers, and how are we testing what works? I think that that's someplace where PSIPSE, and this is where my shift came in, was PSIPSE might offer a unique vantage point. We're a collaboration of donors that is funding in the secondary education space. And so it's MasterCard, MacArthur Foundation, Dubai Cares, and others, and that have funded over the past 5 years about 60 organizations, close to 70 projects in 8 countries, and distributing about $70 million in funding. So it gives us a wide portfolio across individual foundations, portfolios across our work. And one of the things that knowing that we have this really wide net, and that we're looking at all kinds of different interventions because different donors have different priorities, but that there was this theme emerging, and a lot of them are looking at teacher training, and we had some strong projects looking at teacher training. So about a year ago, we started a study to dig in and understand a little bit better from across these organizations for the ones that are most robustly looking at catalyzing systemic change in teacher training and who are really doing teacher training programs. Is there something that we can learn about learn from these contexts and these different projects doing radically different, working in radically different contexts, tasting different approaches, some where teachers are being trained, some strategies for measuring teacher quality, some ICT in the classroom. It's a wide variety, but are there learnings that we start to see emerge and across countries? And I think it's clear for us that there's no single model or approach, and obviously each context is different and needs to respond to that. But there were some lessons that I think were useful to us as we thought about looking across our portfolios, looking across how individual donors are doing grant making. What should we be looking at for an intervention that works, or how do we create more of a rapid learning cycle so that rather than having to test and make the mistakes ourselves, we can be sharing those. And so I'll quickly run through just some of the ones I thought were most interesting. And I'm going to pull those. The key kind of top line ones we found were, I think a lot of these will kind of seem intuitive, but one was developing simple, streamlined approaches and giving teachers time to internalize. So most of the projects, and we saw time and time again, that teacher training programs need to allow enough time for teachers to fully understand the new pedagogies, for them to test them in class through trial and error, and that they need to have the space for that error and that iteration. And that there's this sort of ambition at the NGO level to get things rolled out and across and get them out the door and be able to show results quickly, and for funders and 3-year funding cycles, and how are we creating structures to let people iterate? A second was designing affordable interventions, cost analysis, strategic partnerships with teacher training colleges. This is something I found to be a really surprising finding from our study. We unintentionally, I think, realized that our portfolio is in-service teacher training. We weren't really looking at pre-service. And I can't tell you why, but I can tell you that's the outcome, what we saw. And what we realized was that there really seemed to be a disconnect between the learnings coming out on the in-service and by sort of forging stronger ties between the in-service teacher training, you could really benefit the pre-service teacher training. And that iterative process and those weren't connected, and we were feeding into that. I think as we talk about in every field, that getting government buy-in early, engagement, stakeholder engagement, but at the classroom level and with classroom observation, looking at both intrinsic and extrinsic motivators for teachers. And there's an interesting point made by one of the partners that was that frequently when we look at teachers, we look at their motivation to become teachers as singularly, as though we're trying to increase their motivation, but they come at it with different reasons. Some people have come at it because they really feel the value in the vocation and passionate about teachers. Some come at it with a really rash, reasoned approach to what job market they were compatible to. And what motivates them might be different, and we need to be looking at that differently in terms of programming. Ultimately, what came out most clearly, though, and I thought was really important, was that while there was no single model or approach that worked across the board, and while the lessons there are plenty of takeaways, that more important than anything was the combination and alignment of policies in the country around teacher training. That if the alignment of policies around teacher recruitment, training, monitoring, evaluation, where those were aligned, you saw at the national level success, but so frequently those aren't aligned. For example, if we're looking for teachers to teach 21st century skills, what are we testing them on? And what are they held accountable for? And if those don't line up, it makes it very hard for any intervention to be successful. So it's just some of our sharings from there, but I think that this speaks for me to how many questions are generated in this kind of space, and how important it is to have these space. We talk now about teachers having space to come together and have these conversations, and it's great to have a forum for this.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you to all four of you. I think, you know, you all started from a different kind of entry point, but you've all raised the challenges that teachers are, the demand on teachers. But then I think what I really enjoyed is that all of you then came with ideas, either what needs to be done or what's already being proven, whether it's from, you know, I mean, I guess the big one was teachers need support. Whether that support is connecting them with other teachers, whether it's connecting them with the school system, and in that whether it's the teacher training colleges, the pre-service and service, the government, the system. I think the frameworks that, you know, helping them to understand all these talk about non-academic skills and talk about creativity, but if teachers really do have the skills or tools, and those are really important. So I think they were very, you know, I think what was positive or kind of promising is that there are possible solutions to this big uncertainty questions and through your programs that you're doing it. So thank you so much for sharing. I think we have, so I won't speak anymore, but we have half an hour or maybe 35 minutes depending on how long you're going to stay to open the discussions for everyone else, and we'll start with, please.
So, fascinating conversation and a lot of great discussion about teacher professional learning in there. And I noticed the word culture was up on one of the slides up there. We know that some teachers choose the profession because they enjoyed their experience in school. And their experience in school previously is not what we need experiences in school to be going forward for the future. The extrinsic motivation and the attaboy, attagirl that a lot of teachers enjoyed and want to replicate that in their own teaching practice doesn't necessarily lead to the kinds of outcomes that we're looking at. And so my question is, what kinds of supports are being looked at from the four of you for school leaders, not just teachers, but for school leaders to support, you know, if we give great professional learning to teachers and they want to change and innovate and make different things happen, and then they run into the roadblock of the school leader not supporting them, we end up with problems. So if maybe you could just talk to that a little bit.
Thank you. Who wants to
So you see that we started the program in this way that we wanted to bring teachers from school, and they become critical mass in that school when they go back. So our model was initially that these graduate after doing master's program from IED, they go back to that school and they start doing the professional development for their teachers, but as well as they would contribute to IED as well, because they will run short courses for the teachers. So in this way they are connected with their school and they are developing their own teachers, and they take part in development of teachers from other system as well. So in this way the connection between schools, that they become a critical mass, they create a community in the school where they are placed. So in this way, this school improvement model, the whole school improvement model works. But it is necessary to have the cooperative school, the school which are ready to work with the institute. But when initially it worked very well. We have 10 to 15 schools, those worked with us, and they developed they have developed their own professional development center. They start having this type of activities in their schools, their own schools. But you see that this model is not very sustainable in other contexts, because in government we cannot do it, because in government there is no one person who is taking responsibility of professional development. In private school, in a small school it worked, but in government school where the schools, there is no connection between the professional development and the teachers. So this model did not work. So it is necessary to have the school and the institute, they work collaboratively. Otherwise, the swarm model cannot work.
I think
Well, just something on the response to the question on school leadership, and of course, obviously, there's a lot of research on school leadership too, and you know, part of the challenge that I see in the work that I do and colleagues and researchers is that in our, what we call them principles, other countries call them directed learning, principal development programs, we provide a discourse for talking about what you do. And principals are very skilled at learning that discourse. And if you want to go out and interview principals about what's happening in their schools, you'll get it right back to you. You know, oh, we're doing professional learning communities here, or we're doing this. You know, it's all there. If you send out a questionnaire with all those questions that are designed to measure whether principals are leading the schools the way they all know how to respond to it. You'll get no variation in your responses because everybody knows they've internalized that. It's very difficult to get into the practice in a deep way. I mean, part of it, though, I think, and then I'll stop, is about trying to change the mindset and image of principals for what they're doing when they're leading. So you want to talk about the principal as the lead learner, as opposed to the principal as something else, you know, where the principals are collaborating in and facilitating that activity with their teachers, but learning how to get better to be able to support it, and not as if they know, because they've never done these things either. You know, I mean, it's the same problem. So for them to evaluate teachers, etc. But I think we do have a challenge there, just as we do with teachers, getting beyond the discourse and learning the discourse to describe what I do to the actual practice.
Thank you. Oh, I think
I was going to quickly. I just think it's a really, really excellent point we saw with. And I think Stir Sharath, I hope, will let me speak to his example more concretely, but he's not in the room, and otherwise I would have him speak to it. But with Stir, they were bringing together school leaders in India and East Africa and found that this is one of their early challenges, and it's really shifted how they think, not just about engaging school leaders to create that mindset and value of teaching and value of teachers creating space, but also at the systems level more broadly, and at the inspectorates. And Sharath shared today, and I've heard before, one of their early stories about one of the school leaders who was working. They'd been doing really, really well in the monthly meetings where they were coming together to try and test what kind of innovations they're doing in the classroom. The teacher went back and rearranged his classroom setup to allow for small group dialogues. The school inspector came, and he was very quickly chastised and very quickly put back on task, and it shut down the entire sort of what had come so far over 6 months and taken so much time to build was very quickly able to be shut down because the system wasn't in that mindset. And so they've been really shifting in their model to how are they engaging the systems, and how are they really embedding this in beyond just the school level, and what does it take to change that mindset all the way up?
Thank you. Could we give, I mean, if it's the response to the school leaders, like, can we go so that we can get other ideas and thoughts? So
I just wanted to add to what Nusrat said in response to your question, is that when we started the model at AKUID, we soon realized that teachers were going back and couldn't do the work they were doing because of their head teachers. So we started the educational leadership program, okay, to get, and we also started for both teachers and head teachers to continue their professional development, teacher associations. So we had teacher association for maths, sciences, all of that to continue. So teachers were coming together to continue their own professional development because you couldn't do it. And we had similarly head teachers association. So we had SHADE, school head teacher something association, to get head teachers to continue their professional development. It was very, very quickly that we realized that, you know, teachers were not autonomous beings, that they go into classrooms, and exactly what Michelle said just now. You know, they tried to do it, and because there wasn't like a principal also, so we had all these arguments because teachers were putting their classrooms into a group formation, and the next teacher hadn't gone for the course, so she wanted it in the traditional formation, and there was all these arguments about, you know, how the classroom should be organized, etc. So there were a lot of issues, and I think there is still a struggle to deal with some of
And
those.
actually, Varna, one thing is that it's about the status as well. When they go back after doing the graduation from AKUID, they become there's a status attached with that, their value attached with that, and that in that school the leader is there. So if the leader will feel threatened that somebody is coming with more knowledge, more skills, and they are difficult to sustain their position in that school. So that is why it is important to bring both of them together, that they can learn from each other.
Thank you. Who you wanted to say?
Yeah.
Sorry, can you introduce those who have
Yeah.
not spoken? I think another. Sorry, if you could say who you are, and then we ask you. Okay, go ahead.
So I'm Roo from the Aga Khan Foundation based in Nairobi. I really liked your, sorry Anjlee, your thing about sort of being aware and understanding and all the rest of it. And I think this opens up a really deep question in the way in which quite a lot of centralised training is delivered in professional, well actually no, I call it, well, it's not really professional development, it's teacher training, is delivered in East Africa. It's really delivered in a way where the people who are delivering that training are aware. They at best are aware and understand, but they have never actually tried it in a classroom. They've never actually delivered it. They've basically chosen to deliver the training because of their bureaucratic or political position.
Yeah.
And I think this is a very big issue, and one that we really have to think about how we do that and how we support the decentralization of expertise. So the teachers out in these schools in remote areas are the ones who can actually lead in mathematics or English or whatever. It's unfair to think that a curriculum support officer in Kenya or a ward education officer in Tanzania is able, from coming from a secondary school background, to be an expert in early literacy, early mathematics, pre-primary education, and deliver all that professional development. So I think that's a really important thing when we're looking at this mass centralized training. I think the second thing that, when we teach transformation, is it's not just about the professional development of the teacher. Yes, who am I? And I act and I behave in a certain way and I have certain approaches because I'm a professional teacher. But that is going to be exacerbated and supported by communities and society valuing teachers for what they do. Who are you as a professional and what is education as a profession? And I think that's an area when we talk about teacher transformation that constantly gets lost, is the amount of value we put on the way in which teachers are perceived in society, and the impact that has on their own professional identity is huge.
Thank you. I think Diane. Sorry, I think Diane and then and then sorry, there's quite a lot. Yes, she's also trying to.
Can I just build on what you were saying and just continue, or do you want to?
No, I was going to say mine is not on topic, so
Oh.
if you want some of
Yeah,
the
that's
relate
on that
directly
topic.
to this,
Yeah,
I'll
it's
go for that.
related to what you were just saying about values, because I've been thinking about it a lot since we got here. It feels like it's been longer than half a day. But you brought up something really interesting in terms of trust. So I spent some time in Finland recently, and I heard that word 50 times from the teachers and their trust of teachers and their trust of kids. And I kept, and a lot of it actually goes back to their history and their culture. And to your point around values, right? I feel like that's such a huge part of what they value in their system. And it's funny that you brought up trust from today. So I guess my question is around, so how do you actually create these values, right? So that, the profession is valued, or learning is valued, as opposed to teacher having all the answers. Everything I'm hearing today is that teachers need to be learners in this world where we don't know where the jobs are going. We don't have all the answers. But that's a fundamental different shift in global education systems. Teachers are not supposed to be let me figure this out with you. You're supposed to stand there with all the answers. So I guess that's my question here in thinking about the work that you all do, right? How have you seen this, value shifts in whole communities or countries?
what's going the other way in your country.
Yeah, should we, Anjlee, you wanna take that?
To take on from what you just said, in India it was always like when we say teacher guru, they had to know it all, and that is not what it is like today. So it has taken a lot of sort of working with teachers, that if you don't have, especially when we introduce technology in education, you need not know the technology at all as a teacher, or you need to know just what it can benefit your students with. Even that is good enough as a start. So removing that nervousness of not knowing it all, letting your children be part of the learning along with you, took a lot of doing. But it's getting there. Taking on to his point of principles, today it is more or less mandated that before any professional development for teachers, there will be a day for principals. They need to own that professional development, and if there's any credit going around in the school for it, the principal gets equal credit, even to the extent that the government education system, where the block and district level government officials earlier had sheets which were only, is the building there, library there, books there, fan there, toilet there, now has academic sections in their checklists, which we've managed to put in there. So when they go to a school, they actually have to talk to the teachers, see what professional development they had. Was it what they wanted? What is the need of the teacher? Or are they just making up professional development for them without asking them what they need? So there is a lot of change and a long way to go, but it's in the right direction. And I think the more people who have these conversations, the better for it.
Thank you. Steve, you wanted to
I'll respond to
yes,
a question. I think
think
this is more just what I think after years, but also observing in Minneapolis. In Chile, where I've been working for the last 8 years, only 35% of the kids go to public school, government schools now. 63% go to subsidized government schools, like charter schools, run by independent or small groups, etc. And there's a major public initiative to try to revive public education. But the question is, the public has lost faith in public education. So how do you create trust when anybody with any money whatsoever won't send their kids to public schools, even though on the national assessment test they might be scoring higher in the public school than the neighboring subsidized private school? And I think we've heard examples from Mike in the session I was in earlier today with the secondary school principal from, was he a speaker today as well? I forget. Anyway, from Pennsylvania as well. But authentic demonstrations of student learning in the community, to the parents, etc., in presentations that show what they are learning, that are not just the scores on the state or provincial assessment things that are there for the real estate agents, but actually don't really communicate learning experience. So authentic demonstrations of student learning is a powerful way to build trust. And the system has to make it a agenda. Our Ministry of Education has 4 goals. I won't go through all 4 goals, but the 4th one is building community support for education. That's a system goal. It's not just left as a marketing goal for the individual schools.
Can I make a one-sentence addition to that?
Okay,
just to answer yours. One sentence.
I
think it's interesting that you brought up the Finland case, and I think it's TFA does similarly, where it's the top of the class. They've changed the prestige of the profession. They've changed the pay grade of the profession. You make a much better living coming out of Finland. But one thing that I don't think that we talk about, and I think is an easier thing to change, is in any other profession, we don't treat professionals who are well educated as people to be managed. We treat them as self-driving, self-defining, and that is how we treat teachers. And nobody's who's well educated and thoughtful is gonna want to be in a profession where they're being managed their entire career. And so that's something I think is an easy shift that we don't talk about.
Yeah, very good. Sorry, you've been raising
No,
your hand.
that's fine. I kept taking it down because there was momentum and my question sort of slightly shifts gear. So in a lot of reports coming out of the global education world, they say there's a learning crisis and there's so many out-of-school kids and the number's not going down, it's going up. So we have a massive teacher shortage, and to meet the 2030 Sustainable Development Goal 4, we're going to have whatever number, I don't know, millions of more teachers. How are we going to do that in this sort of teacher transformation mentality that we have? Because most of the schools that my research looks at are not, they aren't described by the way that they don't have necessarily really positive teacher networks with really, head teachers and community support and lots of thought on well-being. They're very under-resourced. The teachers lack content and pedagogical knowledge. They're struggling with what they have, and we need to increase their numbers. How do we do that without reducing it to sort of like teacher in a box or scripted teaching with very little credential and, sort of oversight, even teacher-driven oversight? I know that's what this is.
This is a big question. Probably Teach for America did something, and Teach for Pakistan also. They took the freshly graduate, secondary school graduate, and they start teaching under the supervision of somebody, some senior teachers. But I don't know that. It's the big question, how do we get so many teachers, competent, qualified teachers.
Yeah.
So in India, there's 1.1 million teacher vacancies today. So they are looking at solutions like grade 12 pass young people can go and become a teacher, like a para teacher. And we worked in states where, say, 45% of the teachers are para teachers in the government schools. That is the time when the boxed solutions come in handy. And there was a lot of criticism to our project saying that, you're just dumbing them down, giving them everything ready and telling them to. But we said every day of a child's life is important. If we don't do that, this 1 year of this child will just go with these teachers who are clueless of what is a lesson plan, what they need to do. They go to the classroom, pick up the textbook, they read it, they tick it off, done. But we gave them absolutely tailor-made, spoon-fed, lesson by lesson, activity by activity material, which they transacted. And I think it took them 3 years by the time they got their act together. But we felt at least for those 3 years, the children had a better chance of learning than otherwise.
Yeah, it's better than nothing.
So it is a problem and varied solutions, but yeah, we are nowhere near solving it.
No, I know there wouldn't be one. I wasn't trying to look for sort of here's a solution.
There's not a silver bullet for Anand?
No, of course there's not.
I thought Ron was going to come back at us with
No, I know. But I guess I'm trying to get to sort of like a more contentious level of discussion, because I think we all understand that teachers need to be motivated and appreciated and supported in all kinds of ways. But how on earth do we actually do that? And are there models beyond what we're already doing? Are there things that people can say they've seen, or exciting new experimental approaches that can help us begin to bridge that? And a teacher in a box kit, it's better than nothing. It's better than not having anything.
And to that parent teacher, I think that points Brookings, they in their latest report had the analogy to doctors, the medical professionals, where the average doctor has something like 6 or 7 people who are supporting that position, that professional position. What a nurse can do, a doctor won't. What a nurse assistant can do, a nurse won't. And then if we could do something like that in teaching, where the highest level teacher is not doing the administrative paperwork that we're burdening teachers with, is not doing the personnel management, is actually able to use that top level skill because they have these other people who are specialized in the way that we do in the medical profession. I thought that was one interesting place where it's an interesting approach.
So a couple of things. I think Michelle touched on the importance of pre-service teacher education is absolutely key, and there are lots. So we work in Uganda. Lots of children, essentially, because they're 16, going into primary teachers' colleges, are coming out and there just aren't jobs for them. Could you just completely redesign the way that you do primary teacher training by actually sort of including foundational literacy and numeracy skills, so that you're first bringing up those children to the point where they have the skills to be able to teach before you then start a very sort of systematic and continuous teacher education programme. I wanted just to pick up on what Rupert said earlier around kind of who is delivering teacher education, and I think it links to that point around the importance. I think I made it on the panel earlier about the importance of looking at teachers as novices when they start. And I've heard quite a lot around things like student-centred learning and group working and all this sort of stuff. And often that becomes the focus of teacher education, and you have ill-qualified people who don't understand the evidence around how teachers learn, and then you're measured against those things as well. And you go in and you look at a class and people are sitting in groups, so you tick that box. They might not be learning anything, and I think the key thing is that teachers need to understand sort of why and if group learning, group work, using that example. It's not always the best way of teaching it. It can be really, really effective, but definitely teachers need to understand why you do that. And with all these debates around student-centred learning, sage on the stage versus guide on the side, actually the teacher-led, teacher dissemination of knowledge is really, really important to build the working memory capacity to then be able to do the critical thinking and the more student-centred approaches. And I think that is so often missing in discussions around teacher education. I think it's a real threat. I think all the right things are being kind of thought about. But if we don't look at teacher education as being a continuous process where actually there are some skills that you need to master as a novice before you can then progress to some of the more in-depth skills, I think we have a real issue, particularly when we're trying to do this on mass and at scale.
And I think, sorry, just very quickly, I think this is a real issue because the pre-service and in-service are completely divorced at the moment in a lot of our countries. We're not talking about continuing professional development at all. We're talking about teacher preparation. Stop. Now do some in-service stuff. Reskill yourself. And it's like, this is crazy. We need to be looking at it as a continuum.
The issue is in service.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're good.
The issue is in service because in Pakistan they have transformed pre-service, and we used to have 1 year B.Ed program, but now we have 4-year B.Ed program. After year 12, a student come to teacher education. And now the issue is that 4 years is a huge time. Do we have that this is the time and resource we have enough time and resources to spend in 4-year teacher education to prepare teachers for that? So we need teachers, a large number of teachers we need immediately. So how can we resolve this issue? If we wait for 4 years to develop such teachers, or we can have some ways, like we take the year 12 student and we directly induct them in school and then provide parallel teacher education through teacher education institute, or we should wait for them to prepare after 4 years of teacher education.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.